Last week, I shared with you the things I learned publishing my book, When Magic Calls, a collection of modern fairy tales, during the pandemic in 2020. What I did in that video is a brief overview, so today I want to share more in depth how I marketed my book during the pandemic. I want to talk about the marketing techniques I did and did not use, which ones I would do again, which ones I wouldn't, my thought process, and hopefully all of this will help you make better marketing choices for your book. And if you hang on until the end of this video, I'll share how you can get a timeline of a book, which will help you figure out when you should start these marketing strategies. And I'll give you a hint, it's before you publish. This is Ignited Ink Writing, a channel dedicated to helping authors like you transform your writing so it lingers with your readers. Because writing that lingers gets remembered and recommended to others. I'm Caitlin Burvey, editor and author. Let's start with how I marketed my book online in the beginning. For the first few months after my book's release, I did a handful of things to market it. First, I had Amazon ads. I also posted on social media, and I did things like Facebook takeovers. So, my Amazon ads, I had a friend help me set up. He's a book marketer, I'm an editor, we traded services there for a bit. He set up my Amazon ads and got them going. These have done fairly well for me. I always make my money back, but I don't make much of a profit on top of that. I do need to spend some time tweaking them, getting them up there and working better, and I'm going to do that. I think these are definitely worth continuing, and I know I can get better at them. When it comes to social media, I had mixed results with that. I do know that you can't just post "buy my book" over and over again and expect that to lead to sales. So I've been massaging things about my book in there ever since its release. One thing that did happen that was fun is a bunch of people I hadn't talked to since high school, which was over 15 years ago, were excited and bought my book and were talking to me. So that was kind of nice. Some of my other followers also bought my book, I know because they told me, and this was great. But the thing about social media is I'm not an influencer. I don't have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of followers. So even though a good percentage did buy my book, it's out of a very small pool of people. So if you're not an influencer, social media might not be the thing that sells your book either. I will continue to do this because social media is a long haul game and it is helping my editing business. So I can kind of advertise both my book and my business at the same time. Finally, I also did things like Facebook takeovers. This is where you go on a different author's group or page and you interact with their followers during an event for half an hour to an hour. During this time, you're building relationships, you're supposed to be having fun and entertaining them, and introducing them to you and your writing. Again, I got mixed results with this. You really need to be careful if you're going to do it. It does take quite a bit of your time because you do have to prepare for it. And you want to make sure that you are working with groups who have a significant number of followers that are active, especially who are active during the time of the takeover event. I did have a lot of fun on one event in particular, and that was JJ Marshall's Sirens page. Hers were always fun, but the Facebook takeovers did not really lead to sales, so I wouldn't necessarily do them again. Overall, these online strategies were somewhat effective, but I wouldn't say any of them were the thing that did it for my book and that I would say you have to do this. All of them kind of worked together. All of them were good enough, but not great. Next, I want to cover how I didn't market my book online. Things I didn't do to market my book online when I first released it were other types of ads. I didn't do any social media ads. I didn't do anything like that. I did not have a bunch of podcasts or book bloggers lined up. And I did not have plans to do giveaways or ads through places like BookBub. My reasoning for these are time and money. When it comes to social media ads, I just did not have the time to learn how to do them well, and you really need to know what you're doing if you want your social media ads to be effective. Otherwise, you can spend a lot of money very quickly and not have any sales. I did not do giveaways for a slightly different reason. When you give your book away, what you're really looking for are more reviews. and to spike your ranking on Amazon, which will lead to more sales. But more than that, you're looking for a sell-through, where you give one book away for free, people like it, so they buy your other books. This is a great strategy for a book series. However, my book is a standalone, and it's the first one I've ever published. So I did not think it would have been an effective use of my time and money to give my book away for free right now. I do plan on using these strategies later on when I do have a book series and more books, so I can give one away for free and hopefully lead to sales in the others. The other reason I don't feel comfortable giving this book away in particular is this art was gifted to me. My book is illustrated, each story has its own little art like this, and because that was a gift, I don't really feel like I can give away that artist's work for free when that wasn't their intention. Their intention was to help me with my book and my project. They wanted to see me succeed. So it just feels weird to now just throw that out there for anyone. Very quickly, I realized that getting book bloggers to review your book is not easy. It's time consuming, they are inundated with books, and it's very difficult to find the right place for you and your book. So I decided in the beginning that that was not where I was going to spend my time. I have since done that. I've since sent out requests. I haven't heard back from any yet because it's been very recent, but I have hopes of eventually having that done. If I were to release my book again, I would have done that research up front instead of having to kind of backpedal and do it now. Similarly, I didn't line up podcasts up front because I didn't have the time to investigate them, and I didn't have the tools that I do now to find podcasts that are a good fit for me and my book quickly. It can take a lot of time if you're just trying to Google that sort of a thing. Now I'm aware of other sites that curate podcasts and that make it much easier to find and weed through them to find the ones that are right for you. So that's something that I have done now, but I did not do when my book was first released. I haven't been on enough podcasts to tell you if that's worth my time or not, but I will report back once I do. So, in the beginning, some things that I did not do the BookBub style of ads because I wasn't ready to give my book away for free and I didn't have a backlist to sell. I also did not do social media ads for time and money purposes. And I did not do book blogs or podcasts just because I didn't have the research done in time, but I have been doing that since then. Next, I want to share how I planned to market in person. Before I released my book, I had a whole bunch of in-person events planned, and I had hoped to sell my book there, but also just to celebrate its release. The pandemic did happen right after or during my book release, so I didn't get to do any of these. I had planned to do a bunch of in-person marketing events as well as my online ones. I was also planning to take pictures and use these later as online content. One thing that I was super excited for was to have my book release parties. I planned to have one in Colorado, where I live now, and one in my hometown in New Mexico. As an editor, I do a lot of networking. I have a much bigger circle now than I ever have before in my life. So I was excited to have a well-attended event and to have fun with my friends and my colleagues. This is weird for me because I was the shy kid in high school who was afraid to have a birthday party because I didn't think very many people would show up. So I was super excited for this. Of course, they did not happen, the pandemic did. But I do still plan on having book release parties to celebrate my next book's release. I will bring some of the games and things I had planned for When Magic Calls to that one. I think book release parties are more of a celebration than a selling event. You can treat them however you would like. I was just looking forward to having a party. The other in-person marketing that I was excited for was speaking engagements. As an editor and author, I do speak at writers' conferences and for writers' organizations fairly regularly. This has helped my editing business a lot, and I know that speaking can be a great way to sell books. I had 2 writers' conferences lined up for early April that I would be speaking at, and I knew I would sell some books there. If you are going to go to a writers' conference and plan on selling your book, you really need to be a speaker. If you're just an attendee, not very many people are going to know to go and look for your book in the bookstore. You're also not going to interact with nearly as many people as you do when you speak. The more interactions you have, the more opportunities you have to tell people about your book. So if you're going to go to a conference, don't expect to sell books unless you're speaking. If you don't want to speak at a writer's conference, but you have other areas of expertise that tie into your book, giving presentations and speaking for other groups can be a great way to sell more books. This tends to be more effective for nonfiction than it does for fiction, but it can work for fiction. One of my friends who's a local author is William Liggett. His book is Watermelon Snow. It's a cli-fi fiction book. So it's about climate change, but it's got a happier tone than some other cli-fi fiction does. For his presentations, he talks about a glacier that he went to, climate change, and some of the other science in his book. It's really interesting. It pulls in people who wouldn't normally look for fiction and people who would. So if you're going to present and you write fiction, it can still work. Another presentation that I've seen that works really well are people who present on crimes and who write crime fiction. You could talk about female serial killers. You could talk about historical crimes. These things pull people in, they're interesting topics, and then you can sell your books afterwards. So speaking engagements are something that I plan to do and am still doing. One thing that I did not have planned was a book signing. This is because I used to work at Barnes & Noble, and I have seen too many authors host a book signing where not very many people come. It was painful for me to watch. The thing about a book signing is you are responsible for bringing in those readers. Your venue is not going to do that for you. Just because you host your book signing at a bookstore does not mean the readers are going to interact with you. They went there to buy their type of book. If your book is not their genre, they're just going to walk right past you. So if you're going to host a book signing, it can be fun, but you already need to have an audience who wants a signed book from you. You already need to have a network of people who you can invite and expect to attend. Again, your venue is not going to bring an audience to you. You're responsible for that. So I don't plan on doing book signings anytime in the future. However, I would do something like a presentation at a bookstore with a signing afterwards. You need a better reason for people to come and see you than just to look at your book. So for in-person marketing, I would do a book release party and I would do speaking engagements, but I would not do signings. Next, I want to share my magazine ads performance. I want to start by saying I do not recommend you do print ads. I knew this before I went in. However, when I was looking at doing an ad in a magazine, I had a very specific magazine in mind. It's one that I already subscribed to, that I knew well, and that I knew shared my same audience. That magazine was Enchanted Living. This is a fantasy fairy tale magazine. They have gorgeous pictures of people in fairy costumes. They have articles about how to make wings. They have short stories and poetry related to those things. And they frequently feature authors. So I knew that not only was this my target audience because they liked fantasy, I also knew that they were readers. So I paid for an ad package. I will say that the print ad in the magazine itself did absolutely nothing for me. I would not do that portion of the package again. I know this because the print ad came out a month before the rest of my package did, and I didn't see any change in my sales. However, another part of that package was a spread in their newsletter that they emailed to their email list. The day that that newsletter went out, I sold 30 books through my website, and I saw a spike in my sales on other platforms like Amazon. So that definitely was worth it. That definitely helped me sell some books, and I can verify that information, right? Because that spike happened immediately. The other portions of the ad were not so helpful, but if they were thrown in with the newsletter again, I'd still do them. So I learned that print ads don't work for me. They're not good for my audience, so I'm not going to do that again. But I did learn that if I can find a newsletter that has a good engagement, click rate, all of those things, I would pay for that again. Next, I want to share an author and editor's experience marketing during a pandemic. One thing that I want to remind you is I was limited not only in funds for my book marketing, but in time. I run my own business. I work more than 40 hours every week. Often it's closer to 50 or 60. I do not have a lot of time to spend marketing my book. The more time I spend marketing, the less time I have to write the next book as well. So I have to weigh how much time these things are going to take just as much as I weigh how much they cost. If I'm going to do something like an ad, I'm going to do it well. So I'm going to spend the time it takes to learn how to do it properly. I'm not just going to throw money at it. That's why I chose some things over others. You might have more time. You might be able to do every free marketing technique out there, try them all, see which ones work for you, because you have that kind of time. You might have more funds. You might be able to throw money at all sorts of different advertising, see what sticks, and continue doing that and drop the others. I had to pick and choose. So if you're like me, you're going to have to be smart about it. You're going to have to choose to try some now and hold off and try some later. Also, I was looking for my audience. You're going to have to look for your audience. Your readers might be other places than mine. So think about where your readers are going to be online and in person and try to market there. And remember, marketing is trial and error. Try some stuff. If it doesn't work, drop it. If it does, keep it. Then try something else. This is something that's going to keep evolving for you in your books, and what worked for one author might not work for you. What works for you might not work for someone else. So don't be afraid to test some things out. And let me know how it goes. Share in the comments below any marketing strategies that you've tried. What worked, what didn't. I'd love to hear about it. And for more videos on book marketing and writing, subscribe to Ignited Ink Writing, a channel dedicated to helping authors like you transform your writing so it lingers with your readers, because writing that lingers gets remembered and recommended to others. I'm Caitlin Burvey, editor and author. To find out more about me, go to www.ignitedinkwriting.com. That's where you will find a timeline of a book, which will help you figure out when you should start thinking about your marketing and when you should start implementing those strategies. It's also linked in the show notes below. And go to caitlinburvey.com to see my book, When Magic Calls, a collection of modern fairy tales and other writing. It's also available at most retailers in paperback, audiobook, and ebook formats. My book is filled with curses, fantasy creatures, and the dark and light side of magic. And now it's your turn to think about why I chose the marketing strategies that I did, to think about your book and what might work for you, and to implement some of those strategies to ignite your ink.